The law of supply and demand is a complete, total, utter lie, the way we understand it today. So most people would have you think that supply and demand means if there's less supply, high demand, then the price can go up. And it can get real complex, and you can make that justification depending on where you're viewing the supply chain, okay? So, but I dug and dug and dug, and ultimately the increase in price comes from one thing and one thing alone: greed. And greed has a malicious intonation to it when we say the word. But let's separate that out, and let me explain to you why we all have greed inherently at our core, okay? Everybody's going to say, I'm not really greedy. I just go do and, this and blah, blah, blah. But that's not true, because everybody, when given the opportunity, will strive to make more at the jobs that they do. That's the core fundamental. There's all kinds of justifications for that, but that's greed. Now, that being greed, that doesn't mean it's necessarily malicious. So I just want to get that out of the way. Now, sometimes it is malicious, especially when we get into scarcity control. But let's go back to supply and demand. Ultimately, right, if I'm in business and my supplier goes up, I have no choice but to raise prices, right? So that is typically how supply and demand is explained to the masses for the increase in prices. My supplier went up, these costs went up, I had no choice but to raise prices, which is 100% true. But what made the supplier go up? Well, the supplier went up because there's no more minerals or no more raw materials that go in, okay? So they've, in essence, have a scarcity mindset, okay, of losing my pathway here. That's what creates that scarcity mindset. Further and further back you go along the chain, ultimately it comes back to greed. Now I can raise an example of when, like, say we are mining a rare earth mineral that goes into the base level of the product, okay? So the ore deposits that were being mined ran out, which requires a new investment into new mining procedures, okay? So you're going to sit there and say, well, obviously they had to make an investment, which means prices went up, therefore supply demand. But I would counter, why did they make the investment in the first place? Henceforth, why did anybody start a business? Start a business to make money and drive that profit margin up. So basically I want to highlight the actual malicious players in this. Now, so they will use excuses like that to raise prices. And they might 100% believe it, because that's where we get into the scarcity mindset. And if there's less of something, well, I have to make, like, I could build you a math equation right now. Like, I have this total investment in this product, and it requires me to get this type of thing, and I have to recoup that investment before I make a profit, okay? So now all of a sudden, the base product that's made is now in scarce supply. So I have to raise my prices to hit my return on investment before that product runs out. That would be the logical explanation of supply and demand. But that's not how it's used in the modern sense. So it's like this term has been hijacked and repurposed for a lot of people to say, oh, I had to increase prices. No, you didn't. You chose to. There is where the malice comes from. If you're going to attribute malice, you got to distill down to the actual malice point. And then that gets me into scarcity and why I don't believe in scarcity. Well, do believe in one thing in scarcity, and that is time. That is the only thing I think there's scarcity of. Now, we have the benefit of looking through history and through which I can make this conclusion, and that is oil being a big one, is every time we come close to running out, someone finds a new reserve. This has happened for practically everything. Gold, minerals, cobalt. It happens and happens. And then I remember a book I read a long time ago about space invasions and intent. And that's not to get into that. That was whether or not an alien race would be hostile if they came to Earth, blah, blah, blah. You know, we have all these movies showing Earth is a scarce resource. But what I learned while looking through that book and subsequent conversations I listened to, as we scale out through the universe, the further out we scale, the more abundant stuff becomes. So abundant, in fact, that did you know right now there's excuse me, there's missions in place right now to start doing asteroid and moon mining. And the reason for this is there's an abundance of raw materials out in the solar system that if we can access those, it'll reset the scale on how we look at those items. Excuse me. So that's where I make my conclusion that scarcity is total bullshit. It is a play on fear. And fear is basically a stronger driving force in the human system than anything else, because it's beneficial to be afraid and cautious. Because being afraid and cautious means you're less likely to do something stupid that gets you killed. So we, maliciously or unmaliciously, that part's to be determined. I have figured out ways to leverage this fear-based emotion through the display of scarcity. And think about this. This happens all the time. Go on Amazon right now. You have a product you're looking for. Okay, you find that product. And then, actually, you can do this experiment too. Throw that product in your shopping cart and watch it for a week to a month. You're going to see plays with price fluctuations. Make sure it's a leading product, but these are sales tactics. So buy now while the opportunity's here. 3-day only sale. Okay, or you're about to walk away and the salesman sweetens the deal. Okay, this is a psychological trigger that twinges fear of missing out on a different opportunity or a good deal. And that's leverage to try and get you to execute on the purchase. Now, if you scale that out, like I said with the shopping cart example, you'll start seeing the fluctuations in prices, and you'll realize this is a reoccurring game. Like we have in the U.S., many holidays, and I bet you take some major products, okay? Maybe it's something you already have. Throw it in your cart if you can. Watch it for a year. Watch how the price fluctuates, dips with the sales, and you'll start seeing examples of this. This is a manipulation. It's really bad of basically some form of scarcity mindset to elicit that fear control. It's the same thing when we say there's only 3 of these in the world. And that's the breakdown of supply and demand. The fundamental law. Now, it branches numerous aspects. Sorry, I faltered. I was going somewhere really good with that. I faltered out. But I think I've covered the basis of supply and demand and the falsity of the scarcity mindset. It's just, I learned that from the stock market. Watching, I think a lot of people have tried to play intraday, pattern day trading, right? If you scale out, you see completely different patterns than when you're zoomed in. So, all right, I'm going to quit before I completely lose my focus.